It's time for the chip race.
We're joined now by EPT Prague Highroller champion and WSOP 17th place finisher William Kassouf. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you here. William, you rose to fame and perhaps for some people infamy during your WSOP main event run last year. But before we get to all of that, I want to ask you about your life before poker and how you got into the game. I am correct in saying you're from a legal background. You studied to be a lawyer?
That's it, yeah. I'm a solicitor by profession, qualified as a solicitor here in the UK. Practiced for a couple of years in commercial litigation. Then had a big result in the Irish Open. What was big for me at the time anyway. My first major tournament abroad in the Irish Open, and finished sixth, I think it was, out of 700 and something players for just over 100,000 euros. And I thought, I didn't really fancy the day job so much, getting up at 6:30 in the morning and doing a 1.5 hour commute each way every day. So it's quite long hours in the office. Doing a job that didn't particularly like, even though I was very good at it. So I quit my job then at the time and decided to play poker full time, and I haven't looked back since, really.
I played with you through an EPT bubble, and it's certainly true that your antics, accent and impressions entertained the live stream audience. Growing up, were you always a showman, or is that something that came as you developed your poker style?
I think, like they say, how you play poker depends on your personality. So, you know me, as you've been playing with me a number of times on the tables in Barcelona and other tournaments. That I'm just myself. What you see is what you get with me on the poker tables, on and off the poker tables.
I mean, I've spoken to you away from the table down the years too, and I've always found you a very social and likable person, but also maybe not quite as outgoing as you are at the table. Do you feel that playing poker like accentuates that part of your personality?
I think so, yeah. I mean, sitting in a live poker game and you're in that kind of environment, I'm not one to like sit there for like 12 hours a day in a long tournament, in a 5-6 day tournament, and not say a word to anyone or just put my headphones on. I'm there to like socialise with others at the table, whether it's in between hands or during hand, where I'm trying to get information from my opponents and trying to get a call from them if I know I have the best hand, and try and represent I've got nothing when I've got the nuts, and vice versa. So that's the reason behind it, really. And I like to get involved, and live poker is more of a social environment, and people should interact with others, both in and in between hands.
Well, it's funny you say that. With a couple hundred left, obviously, in that main event that we referred to, you talk about bluffing people or getting them to call when you want. You play that famous hand against Stacey Matuson where you got her to fold queens and afterwards showed 9 high. Your speech play certainly played its part in that hand, and after you'd been forbidden from speaking, I guess your mime act played its part as well. Was that speech, or for that matter, other speeches you deliver, are they routines that you've practiced, or are they all kind of improvised in the moment?
I think they're more improvised in the moment. So certain lines that I've come up with, people have heard before, and I've said them in such a situation just for like banter and whatever, just to add to the situation. But I think I take each situation on its merits. There's never one situation or never one hand that's ever exactly the same as a previous hand I played or been dealt with previously. So I think I take each hand on its merits, play each situation separately. And I hadn't planned what I was going to say during the hand with Stacey Matuson. I think it just played out as it did. I said what I had to say during the hand to try and convince her to fold, to do and say what I could at the time to get her to fold the best hand, because obviously she had the best hand regardless of what she had. I think the way the hand played out was obviously she had an overpair like jacks upwards, whether she had jacks, queens, kings, aces. It made little difference in that situation, because I knew she had a one pair hand, and I put the maximum pressure on her on the river by putting her all in for her tournament life to call off with one pair. And I'm trying to represent 2 pair or a flopped set here that I slow played to play the stopper to flat call, check call flop and check call turn, and then jam all in on the river. So the hand doesn't really make sense if she thought it through. But where the speech play came in to try and convince her to lay down the best hand, that was my prerogative then. That was my duty then, to do everything I could, everything in my power to make her lay down the best hand, because obviously I've got 9 higher on the river and the clock gets called on her. I think there are a number of factors that affected her decision. She's more concerned about how the floor were going to deal with me if she tried to get my hand killed at the same time, and she's more concerned with these kind of like the decisions of the officials and what they're going to do about the hand, rather than actually analysing the hand herself and realising that she does actually have the best hand if she thought it through correctly. But to my credit, since you mentioned it, obviously I had to give her the speech to lay the hand down, and when I got told I couldn't say another word, which is a bit ridiculous, then I had to improvise and mime to her, if you like.
Well, it's certainly made for absorbing TV. Absolutely fantastic to watch. And of course, in that moment, a catchphrase was born.
Yeah. 9 high like a boss, indeed.
And the most entertaining part of your speech play is your ability to mimic accents and say a few words in a wide number of languages. How many languages can you imitate, and how many do you actually speak?
Wow, that's interesting. I don't speak many languages fluently. I mean, I'm half Lebanese, half Japanese myself, so I can speak a fair bit of Arabic and Japanese. I did French and German A-level at school, a bit of Spanish as well. My best friend's Greek. I know a bit of Italian.
Wow.
As well. So I'll say about 7 different languages.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. The accents are really impressive. Like, I've spoken to people who speak those languages, and they say that your accent is really good. My wife, who's French, even though she could tell that you weren't necessarily fluent in French, she thought that your accent was really good.
Yeah, thanks.
So we spoke recently to Kenny Hallert, who played with you deep in the main event. He said that the aspect of your game that wound up the players, as opposed to the TV viewers who were just watching edited highlights, was not the speech play so much, but rather the stalling and the length of time each decision was taking. Looking back at the footage, it was clear that even in spots where you had a fairly clear decision, you were taking a long time. Was this a deliberate strategy to annoy your opponents?
It wasn't deliberate initially. I think, well, looking back at it, it's mainly on day 7 where you see the atmosphere gets a bit toxic and a bit sour, and the whole table seems to gang up against me. But you've got to put into perspective that we're on day 7 of the World Series Poker Main Event. We're playing for 7 long days. There's only around 21 players left out of a field of nearly 7,000 players. You were on a 2-hour clock, and we're playing for $8 million here. So I'm not going to be taking any decision lightly. I'm not going to be rushing into any decision. I'm not going to be playing faster just because the rest of the table seem to want to play faster or play a quicker game than I do, just to suit them when I'm comfortable playing my game, considering we're on a 2-hour clock. I think it's more than reasonable if I have taken a lengthy period of time for any decision, that anyone could call a clock at that time before they made the new rule change now this year. It has to be 2 minutes before anyone can call a clock. So if it has been 2 minutes, someone's entitled to call the floor. The floor's called. The dealer gets asked if it's been long enough, and I get put on a clock. Simple as that. But for those kind of players, that caliber, that level, to get so tilted and that frustrated, the fact that I was taking my time over decisions and effectively then putting them on tilt was beyond me. I couldn't believe that it was so easy for them to get wound up. And I could see that them attacking me, people like Cliff Josephy calling me a clown, and Jared Blesnik berating me from with him and his rail. That I thought, well, if the whole table's against me here, then they're getting wound up by it, and I'm not playing against the rules. I'm within my right to take my time. Then why not? Then I'll carry on doing it. If they're going to be slinging words against me and insulting me across the table, I thought, I'm not going to lower myself to that level. I'll just continue to play my game, and if it's frustrating them by taking my time, then so be it. If it means that they're going to play badly and make bad decisions against me and put themselves on tilt just on such a trivial matter like that, then so be it. It's going to play into my hand, and it's going to mean that I can get their chips more easily.
You mentioned, of course, they're being sort of able to wind these professionals up so easily. Your bust-out hand, however, was, of course, a pretty cold deck hand, kings into aces. After the river was dealt and you were making your exit, some of the players refused to shake your hand, others blanked you. It was reminiscent almost like of a David Brent scene in The Office. Were your feelings hurt that other players, when all was said and done, were almost reveling in your elimination, that they couldn't show the professionalism that, once, you're battling with them in the moment, but once it's over, that they couldn't just let it go?
Yeah, I think it was the 2 players. It was Nowinski and Wong who refused to shake my hand. I think it's a bit pathetic on their part to refuse to do that. That's down to them. It's their prerogative. I thought I'd do the honourable thing and walk out with my head held up high, even though I had just busted out on a sick cooler. I could have just walked off the stage, but that's not my character. It's not the way I'd act or behave on the poker table. Win or lose, you always see me walk away with a smile on my face. So I thought I'd just shake everyone's hand and wish them luck. They decided not to, for whatever reason. I think you might have to ask them. But it is what it is. I thought I came out looking a lot better than the rest of the table did, the rest of the Americans did, and certainly looked better than all the floor staff in their decisions, with a lot of people backing me, especially Daniel Negreanu, in terms of the rulings that were given against me. So it is what it is. Everyone's seen it, how it is, but I thought I came out a lot better than everyone else did. So I've got no complaints on my side.
Sure. Well, the WSOP obviously used that backstage coverage of you complaining that Griffin should have got a penalty at the end. Griffin certainly on record saying that he totally regrets some of the comments to you. Do you feel like you were unfairly treated, that there was favouritism towards maybe the North American players by Jack Effel in particular and his staff? And do you worry about being singled out at the upcoming series? We recently spoke to Kevin Mathers and he said that you would be quote unquote kept on a shorter leash. Do you think that's something that, you know, could come into future hands that you play out there?
Possibly, yeah. I think the other players were out of line towards me, definitely, and I think there was some kind of favouritism, especially towards big name players like Cliff Josephy, who wouldn't seem to get a penalty at all even though he called me a clown a number of times. I took it with a pinch of salt at the time. Wasn't going to let it affect my game. Wasn't going to let it get me on tilt or play badly myself. I was totally focused, totally in the zone, and in fact, it was the rest of the players on the table that were going on tilt, and I was the only one who seemed to be focused on my game. But whether it affects the rulings this year and whether I'm on a short leash, possibly. I'm just going to be playing my game. I don't think I'll do anything different this year than I did last year. I think it worked perfectly for me last year. If it wasn't for the two cooler hands, losing with aces against ace-jack, blind on blind, and then kings into aces in the final two hands, and I was fairly confident I'll make the final table and make November 9. So it'll be a tall order to go further than I did last year, finishing 17th. So I've got to finish at least 16th or make the final table this year. So that's not going to be easy at all. But in terms of the rulings and being on a shorter leash, possibly. But like I said, I'm not going to play any differently. I'm going to play within the rules, do what I think is right, play my A game, and just go from there, really. Hopefully there won't be any abuse of the new rule that's come in of calling the clock. People can now call the clock without having to wait the full 2 minutes. I don't mind it. I think if a good poker player has to be versatile and adapt to all new rules and situations and all players on the poker table, so I'll adapt to that and take that on board. That's not going to be a problem for me. The only issue I have is that people could abuse that position, and because it is me, and people who want to be spiteful against me could call the clock on me like every single hand. But there's also penalties that can be incurred on their part if there's abuse of the clock or they're calling the clock excessively and unnecessarily as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm sure I'll get a lot of camera time this year, considering what happened last year.
No doubt.
In the World Series, so it'll be interesting. I'd love to have another deep run, but yeah, I'll just be playing my A game and just take each day as it comes.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be interesting to see how all that stuff plays out, because it's fair to say that I think you polarised opinion transatlantically. Most of the Europeans I spoke to were sympathetic to you, or at least they thought you were good for the game and the TV coverage, but most of the Americans I know took the opposite view, and I heard casual fans saying stuff like, if I saw him in the car park I'd punch his lights out, or words to that effect. As you face into your first WSOP as a well-known face, are you concerned about your own safety, and have you taken any special precautions this time?
Not really. I'm just going to be aware of my surroundings, and you know, I'm not going to do anything differently. I'm not going to have bodyguards with me in case I do get attacked or whatever. I'm not going to be walking around Vegas scared of being attacked or whatever. You know, I'm sure I'm going to be with friends majority of the time, going to and from the Rio and other places around Vegas. I think I've got a lot of people on my side, a lot of people who support me, a lot of Americans who've been contacting me in the last 9 months or so since they've been watching the coverage, and they're all in favour of what I did, and they're massive fans. They can't wait to meet up and have drinks, go for dinner, etc. So I seem to have a lot of support, even from some of the Americans, even Canadians as well. Even taking into account Griffin Benger's outburst and that final hand, which they all feel embarrassed for him on the country's behalf. So it is what it is. But no, I'm not going to do anything differently. I'm just going to be me. I'm sure I'm going to get camera time in terms of the actual tournaments, but safety-wise, I'm not going to be worried or be thinking about any kind of abuse or attacks in that regard. I'm just going to be just focused on my A game and just do everything as normal.
Well, you mentioned at the top your Irish Open result being your sort of first big live result, and since then you've obviously grinded the live circuit fairly hard. I believe you don't play much, or maybe even at all, online, or not that I'm familiar. Why is this, and do you think it's possible to make long-term livelihood just playing primarily live tournaments? Obviously, it's much more high variance. Do you feel like it potentially puts you at risk?
Well, I don't really play online. For me, it's a complete different game. I think I'm years behind in terms of online playing. And plus, it doesn't suit my style, sitting behind a computer screen, clicking on a mouse button and looking at just avatars and just numbers on a screen. I think the whole idea of poker for me, anyway, is the whole live social environment, interacting with players on the table, getting reads of my opponents, trying to get a read on body language and betting patterns and how people act when they're in and out of the hand. So there's a lot more information that I can pick up playing live than playing online. I have played online in the past, not professionally or anything like that, just to get the grip of how to play like tournaments and cash game online. But that was a fair few years back. I don't really play online now. It's mainly live, and that's where I excel in the live arena, really. I've been told, I joke with the other players online when they ask me, but there's money to be made online, why don't you do it? I said, well, speech play doesn't really work online because either they fold it before I finish off speech, or they shut it in, and there's no chatters allowed in all-in situations. So it really cuts off my speech thing before I've even finished typing. So it doesn't really help me playing online.
You could have those phrases that you're famous for, just cut and paste it into a document. You could just get them in as fast as you can.
That's it. That's the only way to do it. But no, all jokes aside, yeah, it's a completely different game for me. I don't really get the buzz, the excitement of playing online and clicking a mouse button and seeing like 6 or 7 other avatars on the table. It's not really my idea of a good game of poker or something that I think I would excel at. So yeah, possibly in the future. But right now, while I'm doing well in the live arena, I think that's where I excel at, and that's where I bring out my personality comes out, and I shine a lot more in that regard. Then I'll continue doing what I do best and continue to play live.
And given your fame and notoriety, are you surprised that you weren't offered a lucrative sponsorship deal by one of the big sites?
Yes and no. I'm surprised in that obviously I had a big result in the World Series, and I was thinking, wow, this could be my breakthrough year. I could get a big sponsorship deal with some of the bigger companies. But at the same time, I'm not thinking that they're going to take me on just because I had one result in one major tournament. Okay, granted, it's the WSOP Poker Main Event, and I made a lot of noise, ruffled a few feathers, and most polarizing character, most talked about player in the world since the World Series last year, etc., etc. But wasn't surprised in terms of like PokerStars not taking on any big name pros. They seem to be focusing more on celebrities like Neymar and Kevin Hart, Ronaldo, etc.
Sure.
So they weren't signing any big names. I think 8-8 likewise. I think the last sponsor pro they took on was Chris Moorman a while back, and recently Tonka for online, but they haven't signed any live pros recently. I think Party Poker have got their hands full, and they're more online based rather than live, even though they're establishing their live tournament scene. Expanding that well and doing well with that.
I gotta say though, Will, I was just so surprised. Like, like you said, the amount of coverage that got dedicated to you during that show, and follow-up results since then as well. I remember saying to Dara O'Kearney around the time, I said, this guy's going to be the biggest name in poker for the next 12 months. And at the time you didn't know if you would follow up with other results. You haven't, fair play on that, but. When you have that flash in the pan moment and you think, well, this could be the time where William Kassouf is really hot, I was really surprised that wasn't just like grabbed onto by someone.
Yeah, well, it kind of was indirectly. I mean, I haven't signed like a 12-month sponsorship deal with any of the big name poker brands. But in terms of 888, they've offered me like pretty much they sponsored me for their live events throughout the whole of this year, beginning of this year in Rozvadov. I had a nice deal with them where they put me in for all the tournaments there, the main event, the Highroller, paid for my flights and hotel, and likewise in Barcelona recently. That was all expensive paid pretty much. And the forthcoming WSOP, I'm sponsored by 888 for that one with flights and hotels included, and I'm going to be representing Team UK as a wingman and Chris Moorman as captain. With one lucky online qualifier joining us on the UK team. So there's going to be 3 members per team, and I'll be representing Team UK and 888 in the World Series main event this year. So those are those 3 live events effectively. So 888 have sponsored me from the beginning of this year for their live events, and haven't missed one tournament with them. And likewise throughout the UK, Grosvenor have been good enough to sponsor me for all of their Grosvenor tournaments, effectively the GKBT, the 1Ks, and the £500 buy-in tournaments, and then a few other UK tournaments that I've been sponsored by them ad hoc, basically. So I seem to have like Grosvenor for UK tournaments and 888 for other tournaments worldwide. So can't really complain, but nothing set in stone in terms of like a 1-year lucrative sponsorship deal or anything like that.
Well, it sounds like you might be getting the best of all worlds there anyway. You do seem to be a person who is very brand aware. I think I've noticed that in other interviews you've given. And I know you've said many times that you see yourself as almost a caretaker of the William Kassouf brand. Specifically at the EPT Prague Highroller, when you successfully navigated your way from short stack to heads up, given the backlash that maybe came from you buying the title, I guess, when it came down to the deal, do you think that in retrospect that was bad for brand William Kassouf?
Not at all. I think considering my performance at the World Series Poker main event and how far I got there and the amount of coverage and publicity I had then, I thought to wrap up the whole year with getting the title and the trophy and having that under my name on my birthday, no less, as well, on the 20th of December, it was going to be a fantastic achievement, fantastic thing to have to cap the year off. Not to mention the fact that I satellited in for €1,500. I didn't have to buy in for 10k, so satellited in for €1,500. So I was over the moon just to make the final table, just for a €1,500 buy-in to play the 10k main event. And then just to get the heads up, I think Patrick Serda, my opponent, had a 4-1 chip lead. We did a chop based on ICM or chip chop heads up, and I ended up getting like 50k more than second place prize money. By doing the deal there and then taking home the title and the trophy. And it wasn't just any old title and trophy. I think it's the last ever EPT 10k high roller champion and title and trophy. So it did mean a lot to me then. I think Patrick was more interested in the money. I think I was more interested in title and trophy, and considering the year I had with the WSOP. So I think with respect to both of us, in terms of the deal, Patrick got what he wanted, I got what I wanted, and I was more than happy with the €532,500 and the title and the last ever EPT High Roller Trophy. So yeah, can't complain.
Sure, but please don't get me wrong on this. An extraordinary achievement to go from the £1,500 satellite all the way to heads up, but the very act of sort of making a deal of that nature, I'm not saying for a moment it didn't suit both of you, but do you not think that story just doesn't play well in a game where people want to see it go mano-y-mano at the end, and if you win it, then you do truly win it, whereas this just seemed a bit like fudgier?
Well, I see what you're saying in that regard, but then a lot of people have been supportive and respectful of the fact that whatever deal is between the two players, as long as the two players are happy and the people running the tournament, in this case PokerStars, are happy for the two players to go ahead with a deal that they're both happy with, then who's anyone else to come in between and to say that no, you can't do this deal, or no, it's not right?
No, and I don't think it should be that anyone should say anything to you or that there's any issue with that. I just more mean that as the caretaker of the William Kassouf brand, do you think it maybe tarnished the brand maybe as much as it enhanced it?
No, I don't think so. To wrap up the year, and like I said, considering the deep run I had in the World Series, and then to finish it off taking home the title and the trophy, and being the last ever EPT 10k High Roller champion, obviously that's great for my name, great for the brand. In years to come, people won't be talking about he did a deal, or they did a kind of deal heads up where they chopped it, and he didn't win it outright, but he got less money than first and second, etc. People won't be talking about that in years to come. If people ask who was the last ever EPT 10k High Roller champion in Prague, then obviously the name will be there. It'll be William Kassouf, and I'll be there with the title and the trophy, and I'll have this forever to keep. So who knows what would have happened if we played on? Maybe I could have won it. I could have had a double up. We could have chopped the money evenly, then played for the title and the trophy. We could have done no deal and then played it out like a normal tournament without doing any deals, and I could have won the title and trophy. But at the same token, I could have easily lost a heads up and gone home with second place money without the title and the trophy. So anything could have happened, obviously, but it made sense at the time. It wasn't just doing that deal. I think PokerStars were under constraints at the time because it was already like 1 o'clock in the morning, and they were in a rush to get out of there because of the licensing agreements, etc. To leave the Hilton Hotel. Everyone else had packed up and all the tournaments had finished. So we were the last two there effectively. So we were under kind of like time pressure to wrap it all up. So that was one of the other factors that came into effect in terms of just doing the deal and just getting out of there and just enjoying my birthday and going home with the title and the trophy, effectively.
Well, I'm sure you did enjoy your birthday. I'm sure you had a really good night that night. Before we let you go, and I'm really keen just to throw this one to my co-host, who has been for, I think, years and years considered maybe one of the best, if not the best, satellite player around. You're kind of stealing his thunder these days. I can't go on Facebook anymore for seeing in for the min to win the max William Kassouf tweet or Facebook post. Are you trying to steal Dara's thunder as the satellite guru?
Not at all. I think Dara does a great job. From what I know, I think Dara does a lot of that online. I know Dara plays a lot live as well, but from what I heard and what I've seen, it seems to be a lot of satellites online. I seem to do a lot of them live. So I think between Dara and I, we could both say we're the satellite kings in that regard. To be in for the min to get their max, and that's the right way to go about it. If you're playing poker, and poker should be played like in the long game, unless you're a recreational player just playing just for a bit of fun, then you've got to think, bankroll management is so underestimated and is key to any poker player, and so underestimated in terms of the value of these satellites and getting in for cheap and being in for, like, say, 10% of the buy-in, so that if and when you do cash in a tournament, it's a massive payday for you compared to if you buy in. So yeah, it's fundamentally important to play the satellites and be in for the min to get the max. I know I use it all the time as a cliche, but it's so true. And so many people have tried to emulate that and look up to me and see me as an inspiration for doing that. And they're trying to do the same, even if it's in lower buy-in levels. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I think William's record in live satellites is second to none. And actually, I was at dinner at the Irish Open with a number of the English pros, and they pretty much named Will as the best live satellite player that they could think of in England. So I think Will's reputation there is pretty much can't be denied.
Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you.
Well, on that note, William, thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview. You've been a really good sport. I know we probably came at you with a few tough questions, but you've had plenty of them over the last 12 months. You're well used to it.
I have indeed. Yeah, not to worry. No, it's been a pleasure talking to you guys. Yeah.